By far the most asked question on my last video on ultra processed food. So let's talk about it. I'm going to show you one by one examples of what I used to eat that was ultra processed and what I now eat instead. And I'm pretty certain most of these examples are going to be very relatable and therefore quite easy for you to implement as well. So on that note, let's go shopping. First up, we have the protein yogurt. I'm going to focus on one ingredient for each product just because it's a rabbit hole and I could be here all day explaining all the different ingredients. But this here is a classic example of what you would find in your supermarket. If you're focused on protein, you probably would have bought a protein yogurt. Now, the one ingredient I want to focus on in particular, keep in mind there's a few of them, it is locust bean gum. This here allows for consistency of a product. When you open a product like this, I can guarantee that it's completely set. There's no residue, nothing runs, it's just consistent. If you almost tipped it upside down and put it on a plate, it would probably stay in its shape. That's what locust bean gum does. Now, that ingredient individually can cause digestive problems in terms of gas, cramping, bloating. Bloating was certainly one that I experienced. And it's in an abundance of products. Now, what I have now is just normal low-fat Greek yogurt. Now, granted, it's not going to be as flavoursome as the protein yogurt, but what you can do with it is just simply get creative. Add some of your own fruit into it. Add a little bit of honey. Add some seeds. Get creative with it. Keep it natural. It's going to be far easier for your digestive system. The locust bean gum, you can tell, isn't in this product because if you are to open a natural yogurt, you sometimes will see some residue at the top, and that is the whey rising to the top. Really easy way to distinguish whether or not it's more natural than not. Next example is a protein bars. I probably had this one the most in terms of Aldi's own versions. £1.35 as well is ridiculously cheap. But as you can see here, there is a lot going on in terms of ingredients. Maltitols is what we're going to focus on here in particular. Now, maltitol is derived from a plant. It can be very, very difficult for the body to digest. In fact, it's not digestible by the body, so it does its best job at doing so. But as a result of that, it can cause similar symptoms. So gas, bloating, cramp. I noticed this the most before I went for a run. I sometimes used to just get a protein bar down me after a long day at work because I just wanted to go for a run, but I was hungry. So I'd have a quick protein bar, then I'd hit the streets and my stomach was up the wall. Not good. So instead, I now have Eat Natural Raw bars. Really, really tasty, in my opinion, of course. And in terms of the ingredients, you just have very few within it, mainly peanuts and almonds. It's basically almost what it says on the tin. And as a result, digestion is so much simpler. Next is going to be Hovis. I have had so much Hovis in my time, and it's a staple. Best thing since sliced bread, as they say. There's a reason why it is so popular. This here is the ingredients list. So wholemeal flour, which is a good start, to be fair, by law. Products have to be labelled with the biggest ingredient first, and it goes down chronologically. You got water, wheat protein, yeast, but then as we get further down, you then start to see the preservatives, the emulsifiers, the vegetable oils, palm, rapeseed. These ingredients here allow for the texture that it has. Emulsifiers in particular, they are linked with the same symptoms that I've talked about already. If you can play your loaf of bread like the accordion, that would mean that it's got a lot of emulsifiers in it. Emulsifiers allow for a longer shelf life, but more importantly, consistency of texture. That's why Hovis is so soft, and it's very moreish as a result. I personally would recommend that you have sourdough. Yes, it's going to be a bit more gritty. It's going to be a bit rougher when you eat it, but if you put it in the toaster, it's going to taste exactly the same as Hovis toast, in my opinion. But this stuff here, as you can tell, very few ingredients. Almost just its true form. There's a bit of preservatives in there just because it is on a shelf. And so it needs to have some sort of preservative. But very, very few. So choose sourdough. I don't think you'll regret it. Next is going to be margarine. When you are having your toast, try and opt for normal butter. This is what I get. Good British salted butter. Doesn't get any more British than that. As you can tell, it is literally just milk with a touch of salt. Margarine, where do you start? Well, firstly, it's just water. If you look at the first ingredient, it's water. Now that should really say it all. After that, you have all sorts of different vegetable oils or different oils generally that are compounded together through a really rigorous furnace process. And it creates the texture that you now have. So literally you run a knife over margarine, it just literally peels off. Do that with butter, you're not going to get any on your knife. But again, typical symptoms. It's synthetic. It's not going to do any favors in terms of your digestive system. And that's why we have so much of it stockpiled somewhere in Italy, I'm sure. Probably somewhere else, actually. Maybe not Italy. But it's just synthetic. Try and stick to real butter. Next, it's going to be Warburton Thins. You've already seen what I choose instead. But Warburton Thins, again, it starts off quite well. It's got wheat flour, which you would at least expect, not whole wheat flour. Whole wheat is actually second on the list. And then as we go down, we see all sorts of numbers, and in particular, xanthan gum. Now, this here, believe it or not, is found as bacteria on greeny vegetables. So bacteria found on the leaf surfaces of green vegetables, including broccoli, Brussels sprouts, cauliflower, cabbage, kale, and turnips. Now, this stuff, exactly the same symptoms. You'll notice this ingredient most in chewing gum, hence the term chewing gum. It creates that chewiness and that texture, and that's why Warburton Thins are so soft. So soft. But pita bread, 50p from Aldi, I would argue these are equally nearly as soft. And very, very few ingredients. Digestion, I've never had a problem with them. And again, they're cheaper. They're almost 3 times cheaper than Warburton Thins. So do yourself a favour, just get whole wheat pita. I'm not going to labour this point, but if most of your diet is this, and it used to be mine, it's definitely something that I recommend you change, because this stuff is just, yes, carbonated water, but it's just colouring. It's just sweeteners and colouring. And ironically, I don't know if you can see it close up, it's all labelled in green. Like, all the traffic lights say green. So naturally you think this is really healthy for me. But the reality of it is, it's just not. It's just not. So get water. I'm not actually sure which product. I think mine might be Morella. Smart and easy filling function. Have the odd diet drink. Don't get me wrong. Have a fizzy now and again. Life is too short. But don't be using that as your way of getting hydrated. My goodness me, please don't do that. Get some filtered water. It's going to taste that bit nicer than tap water. And again, it does cost a little bit, don't get me wrong. But I would argue the cost of this is probably going to be cheaper than the amount of Pepsi Max that you're buying. So try and stick to water as much as possible. Nearly there. We're nearly there. We're 8 minutes in. Olive oil spray, 1 calorie spray. This stuff I used to live by, especially when I was trying to lose weight. You'll notice a couple of crossovers here. Can I find the ingredients? There they are. So it is olive oil, but with asterisks. We'll touch on that shortly. And then loads of emulsifiers, including xanthan gum. Again, to allow for such a low calorie count, but also the consistency when you're spraying it on the pan. Refined oils. If we can find the 2 asterisks, can we find the 2 asterisks? I don't think it's going to allow for it. It's probably staring at me right in the face, isn't it? Oh no, sorry, it's right at the end. So olive oil composed of refined olive oils and virgin olive oils. So it's not in its purest form. It's stripped down. Emulsifiers are added to it to give it that thicker base, and then it's put into a bottle. So what would you do instead? In my opinion, just get olive oil. Yes, it's a bit more expensive, but my goodness me, it's so much healthier for you. This is the one that I personally get, literally the one I get from Aldi, £4.99. That would be my recommendation. And that's where I'll end it. What I will say generally with ultra-processed food, I've mentioned in the previous video, it's designed to be eaten in excess. So if you're eating it in excess, then you're probably going to end up eating more calories than what you would do if you were to have the slightly more calorific version, the natural version. All these alternatives here that I've shown you are typically going to be a bit higher in calories per serving, but you will experience more satiation with those products because they are full of more natural ingredients, so your body has a harder time processing them. When you have products that are really squidgy and lovely to feel in the mouth, you're going to have a lot of it, and so you'll eat in excess, and you'll eat way more than you would do if you had its counterparts. So just be mindful. There are a few examples. There's more I could go through, but I feel as if those are probably going to be the most relatable. If you have any questions, let me know. Maybe I'll do another online shop, but until then, I will speak to you soon.